actually is running. Like log on to our. Okay, it looks like it's preparing a live stream meeting. Arturo, we might actually be in business.
Nice.
Holy fucking balls.
We're now live on
believe
YouTube.
It, Julian. It might actually happen.
Hang on. They're redirecting us to YouTube.
Arturo, we might actually be in business.
Yes.
Yep.
It looks like
it. Looks like it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay,
All
so
right.
You got
Okay.
the delay happening. Okay, it looks like we're on. Thank you for hanging in there with us, Nicholas.
Yeah, we're up, buddy. Thanks, Julian. Talk soon. Bye. Okay, so we are.
Now we have a loop. I can hear the channel.
Okay, so we are.
Now we have a loop. I can hear the channel.
You have a loop?
Yep. So I think that whatever computer you have next to you, it's filtering the sound back into us. I think that whatever computer you have next to you, it's filtering the sound back into us.
So
I think that
we need to
whatever
turn
computer you have next to
Which
you,
one?
it's filtering the
I
sound
think we
back
need to
into us.
turn this one off. The sound
I
for
think
this.
that whatever computer you
Hang on.
There you go.
There. Are we good?
Good.
Yeah. There's,
Awesome.
There's a
Nice.
delay here, but that's okay.
Yeah, we have a delay.
Yep.
Sorry, guys. It's our first YouTube live stream, and I'm joined with my friend Arturo Camargo. This will be a little rough because there was a huge learning curve to this. It looks like Google put new security on there, and it was linked to essentially Julian's phone.
And he's on the mainland.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's on the mainland. I'm just clicking onto the Zoom portion of this because that's what's going live, and then on YouTube, it's no longer live. It's on the delay. So now we can actually have a conversation. So thanks for being patient, YouTube land. We are new at this live stream thing, and this is the first. So I thank my good friend Arturo here for putting up with a half hour of technical difficulties.
It's good. I know how it goes. Technology is never 100% trustworthy. So I just hope everybody in the YouTube channel understands and they stick with us for a while.
It's almost like a HEMA event, like you're there at the tournament, everything's an hour behind. It doesn't even matter who's running the event. It's always an hour behind. It's like, how far are we behind on this tournament? 3 hours.
Yeah, there is always something. Always, you believe you're prepared for anything, and the one thing you didn't think about is the one that is hitting you in the face.
Oh yeah, look at the software that was developed by Sean Franklin. It was really good software, and then it's like, oh well, it won't work in a place that doesn't have internet.
Yeah,
just crashed. That was like one of the oversights that I think it works now off the internet, but it took a while to get that to work. But I mean, sometimes you're in a place with no internet. No one really thought about it because internet's pretty much everywhere.
Yeah, I mean, it is like that every time. Like the first time, you always there is something always that you didn't think about. You just need to learn, and it is part of the process to make mistakes. But here we are, a bit late, but we're live.
Exactly, pretty cool stuff. Now, Arturo, you want to tell everyone about you a little bit? I can tell some of my experience with you as well.
Yeah, of course. Well, first of all, thank you for having me in the first podcast for the channel. For the people who don't know me, my name is Arturo Camargo. I think it's on the screen. I'm the head instructor of Krieger Escola, which is a HEMA school in Mexico. We are based in Toluca, Mexico, which is pretty close to Mexico City, and we have a few branches across the country. I say hi to Leonel, who is one of the guys in charge of Ensenada, because I know he's watching. I've been fighting and doing HEMA for 12 years now. This is gonna be in 4 or 5 months. It's gonna be our 13th anniversary for the school, and I've been around, mostly Europe, Swordfish, ILHG, also in the States, in the Long Point and Combat Con. Like, I like to go to the main events in the States and in Europe. I think there is a lot of things to say, but that is just the brief introduction.
Now, so you guys know, Arturo is probably one of the best single-hand sword fighters I've met and fought against. And I mean, he's one of the hardest working guys in HEMA. What you don't see him do, you will inadvertently benefit from. He's very good at just getting things done, and especially from event organizer perspective, bringing people together. Very good at this as well. Probably one of the best, and his hand's really silent. So I mean, He's one of these guys. When I say he makes moves, he makes all the right ones.
Thank
I'm
you,
going to
buddy.
have you log into my computer, Nicole,
Okay.
so that if we have a YouTube channel question, then people can actually talk to us.
Yeah.
Because we're going to eventually get questions on live stream.
Yeah, that
In
is
order
the
for us to have a conversation, it doesn't look like with the live stream lag, I'm not able to actually see what we're doing.
Yeah, no. That is the cool thing about the lives, that you can interact with people and have questions in the chat and talk to them. So I like that. It's a good
Yeah.
setup.
Yeah, and Arturo and I will more than happy to ask questions. Nicole will be fielding them from the other side of the room with our other computers. So just
What do I log into YouTube?
oh yeah, just go into YouTube. Yeah, and just view the live stream. You'll probably want to plug that computer in, because if you don't, it will die.
All right.
Yeah.
Technology. You know, I'm a sword wielding beast. I like to work out and ride motorcycles. I'm not highly
Yeah.
skilled with a computer, so
Yeah.
I mean, most of this is my tech guy's genius. I got to thank Nicholas Montonin for this, because he did set up the live stream. We just didn't know how to figure it out. Nicole and I, we got done, but it took a while.
Well, you know, it sometimes it seems harder to figure out how to use technology than how to use a sword properly. I don't know.
It's true. And the problem with that is like, for us to grow as an art and to have more quality HEMA, technology is key. Like right now, I found, like, when COVID hit, we had 10 days to develop an online program. And I'm like, man, how are
That
we going
is,
to do this?
yeah, that is actually very interesting, because I think it's like the hot topic. I was just talking with some guys in Latin America, in Chile, and I say hi to people in Argentina, Chile, and the rest of the South American continent. And we were talking about that, like the challenges we are facing right now with the pandemic. And Mexico, we are still quarantined, and I think in Chile and Argentina is the same. So it is a challenge, and we have to adapt, and we have to overcome our fear of technology and start using all the, because we have a lot of tools now that we can use, you know, like YouTube, and you have Zoom, and you have everything. You can train, maybe not as good as you can do it in person, but at least you can keep on going, and that's something we could not have done 15, 20 years ago.
We could have done it 3 years ago. Let's be
Yeah.
honest. Like the
Yeah.
streaming software, high bit rate. Like, honestly, we're on fiber right now out here in Qualicum Beach, and
Yeah.
we're the direct link. So I'm able, it's even faster than it was for us in Burnaby, which is kind of bizarre, but it
Yeah.
is. And I'm able to actually stream my lessons to my students, which is kind of nice, honestly. Is it a substitute for seeing me in person, training and sparring with me? No.
Yeah. No.
Is it hard to do drills without even a Pel by yourself and get better? Yes. Probably
Well,
the hardest. Just mute the computer. Yeah.
it is better some training than no training. So right now that I cannot see my students, that we cannot meet, well, they can still do something. I can still check on them using Zoom. And there is also interesting, because no, we didn't do this 2 years ago when we already have some of these tools, and now we are here sitting, talking to each other. You're in Vancouver Island, I'm in Toluca in Mexico, and we have these amazing tools, and we can just be closer.
Yeah. Essentially, we do, and it's actually pretty amazing. When we, like, I'll give you something interesting we found up here in Zoom as well. And it'd be interesting for the audience. We have a couple of students that are actually training in pairs, and a couple guys have come to us from the Alberta area,
Yep.
basically not Calgary, Medicine Hat, right? I think it's Medicine Hat, isn't it? Yeah, I think it is. Anyway, Joe and Alex, if you guys see this, you probably will eventually. Hi guys. So they've been interested. They're part of our beta program right from the beginning, and we're finding that with a quarantine partner, people are actually improving at a rate, I would say 2 to 3 to 1, probably closer to 3 to 1
Yep.
on the students practicing by themselves. It doesn't mean the self practice is worthless. It just means that partner practice is still superior than solo practice.
Yeah. Well, this is something very interesting, and I think this is also one of the hot topics right now, because I know you're about to launch your online program, and we
It's already
launched ours. Yeah, nice. Congratulations on
thanks.
that.
Me too.
And we did that as an experiment 4 years ago. And we're still in that part where most people, and especially martial art instructors, say that there is no way you can teach online, right? That is students are not going to learn. And I was a little bit skeptical 4 years ago when we were starting because we didn't know where we were going to. And 4 years after, almost 3.5, one of my students who started doing this online comes to Toluca to Encuentro, and he gets the second place at his first tournament. So I believe you. I know we can teach them and they can improve. And there is a few things you cannot supplement, like sparring and uh, direct interactions. But in the end, if you know how to set it up, for sure they're gonna learn, because also they are more committed because they have to put more work in than if they just get it from you straight.
That's true. And also, I think it's interesting because I think it made me a better teacher having to teach in this level of detail. Because
Yep.
you come into class, you're tired, maybe you're working out, you're sparring. You come into class, you're tired, and sometimes I hate to say it, I'll just grunt and move a person's arm in the right direction. Uh, uh, do this. I mean, as a martial arts teacher, you can get pretty lazy sometimes. Admittedly, like it's a thing, and but when you look at this, like this new tool, when you're explaining to a student how to throw his workout, for example, from and they could be anywhere in the world,
Yep.
you have to know exactly the mechanics that go behind it. You know how to look at the small nuances in their bad web camera. A lot of people's web cameras aren't great. Like, I mean, they're, I would say, not even like 1080p. So you're looking at essentially a flattened image. So it's not even 3D. Like, this is really good, but I have a very good camera. But for them, right, when you're correcting that, is understanding the nuances. And I think that understanding that nuance made me a better teacher.
Yeah, yeah, because you have to think like what are they gonna see, and then you will have to try to adapt. You're right, because as you said, sometimes, to be honest, I also come to class and I already have an idea of what I'm teaching, and you just give a general explanation, but you already know that there is a bunch of information you're not giving away in the beginning, and then your students are gonna start making mistakes, and depending on which mistake they make, you give them a correction, right? With you're shooting and you're making a video, you want to make sure that every single detail is in there. And of course, you always probably forget about something, but you try to be as careful and as detailed as you might, to make sure that they get very good, high quality information, right?
But that's a big thing. Is like that high quality information. When you look at like how most people teach martial arts in any club anywhere, it's very rare that the teacher does a lot intrinsically. I know when I started, like I could do things, but I could show them, but I
Yeah,
couldn't really explain them in greater detail.
yeah,
And a lot of martial arts like to think they can, but they can't. I mean, I go to
yeah,
a lot of classes where I hear this. You just sit in the average seminar, like like not just seminar, but in like seminars in different clubs and stuff with top people. I mean, you're just gonna see it. Most of them can't explain why they do it. They know why they do it. They can do it. They can
yeah,
actually show you how they do it too, which is good enough for the most part. But when you're online, it's that next dimension of very precise explanation.
yep.
And I think that was going to be that's how we're going to see the adaptation during COVID of who sticks around in the HEMA community and who doesn't.
Right. That is also very important. It is like you have to adapt or you will eventually die. That is just the rule. And you have to learn. This is an opportunity for us to improve and to provide different things. And I think this is a very good example. Like, there were not a lot of podcasts on HEMA in the last couple of years, and now there is a bunch that are popping up. But there is also the thing: once things go back to normal, how many of those productions are gonna remain, right? And then you have your channel, which is really successful. You have 73,000 uh,
I'm a
followers right
73.
now.
Oh, that's
Yeah, I just checked before. Yeah, 73,000, man. And we know this is gonna keep on going,
yeah.
but there are a bunch of podcasts and YouTube channels that are popping up, and they probably won't survive after we go back to normal. And that is also very important. So we have to adapt, we have to learn, we just have to keep on creating, right?
Exactly. Are there any questions for us yet, Nicole?
No, not specifically, but just commenting on how awesome the channel is.
Cool. Awesome. That's cool. So yeah, Nicole will just field if anyone has a question.
If there's anything specific that you guys are talking about, there was something comments
Yeah.
about protesting. I'm not going to go.
Yeah. This is a topic. This is just about HEMA.
Yeah.
Like and martial arts, right? And that's what this podcast's about. That's what this channel's about, right? Like I like a politically neutral channel.
Yeah, that is the best, right? I mean, somebody said that politics is everywhere, and that is true, but you don't have to politicize everything. And I think that is for the best.
Even at my new school, like we build like the place on our property, right? We have 1,200 square feet on our property that'll become a new school, right? The reality is, I'm going to keep politics at the door,
Yeah, that,
and
that, that is the
it's a lot
way.
easier.
Yeah, that is the way it was done in the past. That is when I was learning taekwondo and other sports. You go there and you just do what you're doing there. Later, maybe you can meet up with people and you want to talk. You and I, we do that. We have a specific place and a specific time to talk about those things, right? This is HEMA, so let's talk about it, right?
Exactly. It's all about training, the things that really matter, right? Like,
Yeah,
I mean, everybody gets politically heated about everything nowadays. We're both guilty of the same thing in private. I mean, a bit more public right now with some things I'm doing on other projects, but at the same time, it doesn't. I don't think it has a place in the martial arts. I think that we
yeah,
politicize martial arts. What happens is you lose the ability to have specific quality training partners, and some people want to use this as a political platform. I mean, we could talk about that, and the use of martial arts as a political platform, which I think it is an invalid political platform.
yeah. Well, I think that there are also rules for that in most countries. Like, for instance, in Mexico, you cannot talk about politics within a church, right?
Oh wow,
So, and you shouldn't.
no, you're
So,
right.
yeah, yeah. So I think this is HEMA. So let's just focus on that.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's going to be. I think if more people did that, we like depoliticize like HEMA essentially, or like or in any martial art, we focused on the training, the fighting, the hard work.
Yeah,
Honestly, I think it'd be a way better community. And
yeah.
we know that there's people out there right now, again, using a political soapbox. Man, I give them two thumbs down. It's not.
Well, well, that is it is for sure. That is something we have a podcast. We have a lot of also material we're releasing. We're doing it in Spanish now. We have a lot of HEMA channels in English right now. There is one thing we were talking about. It is like we are living a transition time, and we have to also learn from that. No, not that we are perfect and we're doing everything right, but we have to learn about it. But I think it's very important to have a specific time, a specific space for everything.
Well, that's exactly it. And I think that also gives a space, makes space more accessible to people, right?
Yeah,
And I think that if we do something in that way, I think it'll be better for everything long term. I mean, you're never gonna cure yourself of people who don't want to put the work in. Like, I mean, if no one wants to work hard and train hard, I'm like, I don't
yeah.
really care what they have to say. It's an unfortunate fact that everyone knows that's my opinion in the community.
But I mean, it is also not something new, right? Like there's always been people willing to do the work, and there's always been people who didn't want to do the work, to put in the work, right? So, and I think that is something we agree on. Like, if you want to get the results, you have to put in the work, right?
It's just like the idea. You see these guys out there, and I mean, it's in every martial art. He must just like we're inundated with it because we're there all the time, so we see it. But you see the guys out there, they're instructors, and quote unquote, they're like instructors. They don't train. They teach 1 day a week. I mean, they could at least just be like, I'm working to be instructor, to be really
Yeah.
honest with you, right? When you look at this for you, how many hours a week do you teach when your club's running full time?
Well, when we were running full time, there was a time, for instance, we were having around 5 classes a week, 2 hours each one, just in my school, and then I was teaching 5 other classes a week in the high school I work at, that was also fencing, and then another 4 hours a week in a different school. So we were talking about 14 classes a week, more or less. And the last year it was something around 10 or 12 classes a week. So yeah.
So when you look at that, right, and you consider that, you're the how long is the class? Would you say?
Usually, yeah, in between 1.5 and 2 hours.
Okay, so now you're looking at a minimum of almost pretty much 30 mat hours a week. If you look at
Yeah.
it, that
Yeah.
doesn't count your own training or your sparring.
Exactly. It is. Then you have to go to the gym, and then you have to do some conditioning, which I don't most of the time, to be honest. But you should. You should, right?
Should, yeah.
So for
Not
me, it's
everyone's
supposed
as gifted as you, bud.
yeah, but I mean, we live like so many meters above sea level, so every time I leave cities, like I run every day, so no
Well,
problem.
I'll never forget fighting you in that final in Toluca. And by the end of it, I just wanted to die. Like seriously, it was like, and you're smiling near the end of it because you're like, you dragged those 10 points out. Like it was, I could see you're like just enjoying watching me suffer. It's like if you're gonna take this, you're gonna suffer for
Yeah,
it.
yeah, it is true. It is true because in the end, I live here. I know how to handle myself in this altitude, and at some point, it actually becomes a weapon for us. You know, they talk about it all the time in the football community. When teams from South America come to play to the city, they suffer a lot, and the professional team in the city, they use that as a weapon because they know how to. They live here, they train here. So in the end, yes. And but for me, the most important point is that when I leave the city, when I go to the beaches, when I go to Europe, for instance, I mean, it is like I'm in the best shape of my life because I'm under when we go to the ILHG, we are under sea level, and I come from so many thousand meters above sea level. So it is like nothing. I could fight two tournaments in a row. I wouldn't feel that bad, right? It is.
Well, you look at Nicole, who's a gifted natural athlete, right? She's great, absolutely fantastic endurance, and she goes to Mexico, and she just like every tournament she's fought there. By the end, she's like, she wants to die.
Yeah.
Like that one set of tournaments we did back to back. She just crawls up in the corner and has an hour nap.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, this year,
So question
uh,
on knife self-defense.
Oh, sure. We have a question on modern knife supplements. You also do knife, don't you?
knife, yes, of course.
Yeah, yeah. So
Because what are your thoughts on modern knife defense? Do you feel that a lot of classes give you a false sense of how dangerous it really is? I feel a lot of techniques rely on clumsy stabs.
what's the name?
Maximus.
Maximus. Okay, I hope you're still there. So we're talking about
Knife-
modern knife self-defense and its effectiveness, essentially. And what was the exact wording, babe?
Do you feel a lot of classes give you a false sense of how dangerous it really is?
Do you feel a lot of classes give you a false sense of how dangerous it is?
No. Of course. Yeah. This happens was you know when you're in a good track in social media when you start having haters. We were starting posting our dagger classes in Instagram and talking about it, and people start saying like, "Oh yeah, but what happens if they use the other hand, or what happens if this or that?" And of course, they're missing the point. Like they are not attending the class. But something we always talk about in our knife and dagger classes is that rule number one: don't do it. And if you have to do it, yeah, of course. And if you have to do it, you have to remember that you are gonna get stabbed or you're gonna get cut. So there is no way when you go into a knife fight that you're gonna get out clean. Um, it is actually one of the worst things you can do. And when I'm teaching self-defense, I always tell my students that I fear more the knife than I fear the gun, because the knife can make so much damage, and people usually are not aware of this, how dangerous the weapon is. So I think yes, and I think that if you're looking for a place to train knife fighting, you should always look into how honest the instructor is about this, because knife fighting is probably one of the most dangerous things you can do in real life.
As someone who shoots and hunts, I mean, I would definitely agree with you. The knife is a real danger, and yeah, there's a lot of good guys out there, and there's a lot of charlatans. Like it's like anything in the martial arts.
Yeah.
In in training, people really go through this idea that they're going to take 6 knife defense courses, and they are going to be like the next transporter, right? They do. They think they're going to be the
Yeah.
next Jason Statham, and they're
Yeah.
not, right?
Yeah.
It's so funny because like you look at the guys who seriously train the combatives and stuff. Well, like we brought Keith Jennings up here. He's fantastic, by the way. If you ever get a chance, I would highly recommend him. He's got a real blend of combative styles, really strong. Anyway, I'd love to have him again, put it that way. If you look at these guys, they train seriously. Their students train seriously. And so if you're going to defend yourself in a life death situation, you need to train seriously. But you're going to start by training week. It's going to be you're doing drills and doing these things, blocking knives and getting hit, and just expecting it and becoming normalized to it. As this ramps up, or at least for how we teach at Blood and Iron, as this ramps up, well, like the intensity ramps up. So guys like the more senior people, I often have them in full gear spec jackets, all class, like doing blocks of kicks and punches and working on stabs and stuff. I mean, and it's grueling because that's what it is. If you're not prepared to train hard, I mean, it's like the old saying, train hard, fight easy, but with a knife, you want to train really hard because that fight's never going to be easy. You just want to be a little easier.
Yeah, that is one point that most people, I think it is a misconception about knife fighting, especially knife training. It is like it doesn't work if you go slowly in the beginning. But I see it as also riding a bike. If you don't know what you're doing, you're gonna fall and fall and fall. So you have to start easy. But eventually, and this is something we do also in a few drills we do when we are doing the knife training, it is like you learn the technique and you learn how to parry and you learn how to grab and you maybe learn how to disarm or throw the opponent. And then after we know you have some experience, we're gonna go like, okay, he's gonna start here, like he's trying to rob you, and you will try to do whatever you can to survive. And then you just go like, go. And when you go, you get stabbed maybe 4, 5, 6 times before you can actually control the opponent, and you can actually pull one of these techniques that you have been training, right? But in the end, that is also an eye opener for the students to realize that it is not that easy and it's really dangerous.
Yeah, and that's an important key. And I mean that if people approach, like if you approach your sword training like you approach knife training like that, I mean you'll be successful in all things.
Yeah.
And I think that's actually a big thing. We have another question, Nicole?
No question, just comment there. Somebody was saying that knives are terrifying even more so than guns in my
Yeah.
Trapper Scout.
Yeah, so Trapper Scout agrees with us. He says knives are more terrifying than guns, and I fully agree.
If you know about weapons, yeah, if you're trained and you know about weapons, you know that the knife is one of the worst things you can face, especially if you have nothing.
Oh,
The
yeah,
gun, at some range, it is okay. Well, it can only shoot straight forward. If it is further away, maybe you should be worried. But then also you have to consider if the person using the gun knows how to shoot, because most people believe that they are automatic because they reload by themselves, not because they aim by themselves. Right?
it's true. It's true. You look at some of the criminal mentality out there, and they're just like, "Oh, I just got to point this gun." They don't realize that even moving that from a handgun perspective, even moving a slight bit, just throws the angle off, right? They did a study a while back, and they said that most people, average person without any training, cannot hit a target at 7 yards. And I mean, you can run 7 yards pretty fast, but the problem
And then,
is, someone with a
yeah,
knife, well,
he can run.
he can
He can,
run.
he only has to outrun you to stab you several times before you can defend. And I think these guys are being nice because I've done some shooting, and if you don't have the training, you wouldn't hit anything at 3 meters, which is like 4 yards. So
Yeah.
7 yards is already too much. And I think most people they think it's so easy, and then you have to pull the trigger, and even then they don't have the strength to do it, or even to charge the gun. So I think yeah, the knives are because you don't have to have experience to stab somebody. You can just trip on them and stab them, and you won't even know what happened. But then they are gonna be bleeding.
Yeah, and you know what? If you actually go from a different perspective on this, a knife's really cheap and easy to get. You can get like an 8-inch chef's knife at Walmart for $10.
Yeah,
So I mean, if you could just walk into somewhere and buy like a chef's knife, is it like a glorious handmade combat knife? No. Most criminals don't care. They have a
yeah,
cardboard sheath and a chef's knife. And if you don't think a chef's knife is dangerous, give your head a shake because you really don't want to be on the other end of it.
yeah. I mean, in some cases, you don't even need a knife. You just need a screwdriver, and you're gonna
I've
stab
seen that.
somebody. I mean, you just have to go hard, and not even that hard. And even in there, I would be really careful with a screwdriver because they can do a lot of damage, um, even if you don't have training.
Oh, we got another question.
Yeah.
Yep.
In your opinion, which is harder to master and teach, HEMA or knife fighting?
In your opinion, which is harder to teach, knife fighting or HEMA? And who's the person?
Diego PG.
Diego PG is the person.
Well, that is a hard one. Because if we see HEMA correctly, then knife and dagger fighting is part of it. But most people don't train it properly, and they just eliminate the hand-to-hand combat. But I would say that they're pretty closely. There is one part, for instance, in Paulus Cal that I love, and there is an image where somebody's coming at him with a stab into the belly, and he's making the basic parry to move aside the attack, and he says this is the absetzen, and then you go, of course, into longsword and you learn what absetzen means, which is displacing. So I think that if you learn properly, one, it is not so hard to transfer. I mean, there are specific to each weapons, but I think it is not so hard to transfer. Now, if I had to be straightforward, I would say it is harder to learn how to fight a knife because it is more dangerous, it is faster, there are so many things that can go wrong, and at least with the sword you have more space, and the more space you have, the more time you have to react.
I would agree. I would actually say for different reasons it's harder. It's harder because because this here has to be tough.
Yeah.
If you go to a HEMA tournament and you're geared up in spec gear and stuff, and you're gonna go at it with the faders, the worst you might get a broken something, and most of the time though you're gonna call it just bruises. It's a fun sport. It's unlikely you're going to get a sharp sword and go to battle with someone else. I mean, it may happen, but it's highly unlikely. Like the likelihood of a knife fight happening versus a longsword fight is probably in the millions of magnitude different. The chances are astronomically higher that you will one day maybe face a knife in a confrontation. So if you look at it from that perspective, is it hard to teach a person to go have fun with their friends and hit them? No, not really. Is it hard when you're simulating real violence? I would say that right there, the mental toughness game is probably half or more of that. At least in my opinion.
True. No, that is true. And you don't have this in Canada and probably not in the US, but in Latin America, especially Central America and in some places in South America, you still get machete fights. And you can go here in YouTube and look for machete fights. But even that, it is not as hard as knife fighting. So if you want to see the actual reality, you just have to Google knife fighting and see how people get stabbed so fast and so hard. And then you can see just a machete fight in the street. And it is, even if you get actually chopped, because it is more like whacking in the machete fights, it is not as scary. It doesn't move at the same pace. So I agree with you. It is a mental challenge
but
to
lots
go
of those
through.
guys don't train either, right? And a lot of them are hardened criminals. There's an honor component to it in this sense, and versus the knife, where a lot of the people you see getting stabbed are criminals stabbing someone who's on their phone like this.
Yeah, exactly. They just come out of nowhere.
Question.
We got a different question.
Nice.
Leonel Gonzalez, if you were unarmored, which is the most effective weapon taught in HEMA, both for defense and offense?
Okay, so if you were unarmored, and this is Lionel,
yeah.
Huh? Lionel,
yeah.
Leonel Gonzalez. Cool. And if you were, so you're saying if you're unarmored, which is the most effective weapon taught in HEMA? Now, for both offense and defense. So this will be interesting.
Okay, so I'm gonna give you my top three. Okay, so number one, I'm gonna always go with Messer, because at least in Latin America you can still carry around machetes. Okay, so when people tell me how I'm supposed to apply this into my daily life, put a machete in your car in the trunk, because that is the only way that it is legal in Mexico, and you have a self-defense weapon, and you can still apply the principles from fighting. Number two, single stick, because it is a very straightforward system, and in most countries you can still carry a stick around. Number three would be dagger, if you know how to apply it to knife fighting. Those are my three.
All right, so that's a pretty good answer. So I will go with a different set of answers. So if I go with what is the absolute most effective HEMA weapon, and by far for offense and defense, I would say side sword paired with a secondary.
Yeah.
It's the most versatile. I can cut almost as well as I can thrust. I can pair it with a dagger or a buckler. I could probably compare it with a scabbard even if I had to, or a cloak. I mean, when you actually look at and you cut almost as well with the false as you do with the true. So when I look at a weapon that is as almost as long as a longsword, like some of them are like 36, 37 inches. So you're looking at a weapon that cuts not as well as a longsword, but much better than rapier. Thrust almost as well as a rapier, but thrusts a hell of a lot better than the longsword. So you're looking at like and has its own as secondary. I mean, pretty hard to beat that as the number one choice in terms of just sheer fighting component. That being said, is it practical? Well, you probably could carry a side sword in your car, but people would probably question why you have a
Yeah.
side sword in your car. Two would be Messer, which for the same reason as Arturo, the Messer, in my opinion, is like it was carried because it was useful. It was the agricultural tool of its day. So for all the HEMA people out there who get mad at me for teaching cutting with a machete to start, right? The machete descends from the Messer, and you may not like hearing that, but just Google Collins Knife Company and you might understand.
Yeah.
I've done my research on this, and the blades are almost the same. Now the difference is an Albion sold at, which I own one. I know they're really good. Just saying that they go for $1,000+ US. A machete in Walmart in Mexico goes for $5 US.
It is
Cheaper.
for US, yeah.
$4 US, even cheaper.
Yeah, that is something we do actually here, Lee. Somebody was asking, I was checking the chat about swords and we would recommend. And this is something I tell my students at the beginning. You just get a machete because it is steel. And even for training, you can just kill the edges and train with it. And it's a very good tool. And you're going to spend 80. In Mexico, it's 80 pesos, which is around for US. And then I was also looking for a very cheap cutter for my students to begin. The cold steel machete. It is 50 US in Mexico, slightly less than that, and you can start cutting. So that is the nice thing about the Messer. But in terms of swords, when they ask me for me which is the best sword, I usually say side sword precisely because of what you said. It is the midpoint. You have a good cutter and a good thruster, while the long sword is not such a good thruster as the rapier, and the rapier is not such a good cutter as the longsword. But the side sword, and as you said, you have the other hand. And if you're able to use the sword, for me, this is the ultimate commando crazy stuff. You have a machete in one hand and a smaller machete in the other hand. So now you have dual wielding, And in some countries like Mexico and probably Philippines and some crazy second, third world countries, you can still carry these things around legally.
Well, if you're out in the farm country, you're going to be using it almost every day. So I have one more, and this answer kind of goes from the norm here. I would say the third one, my third pick would be spear. And the reason I say spear is because a good spear can be used. It's not just your normal everyday kind of tool. Yeah, you're not going to carry a spear everywhere. No. However, you can affix a survival knife and make an impromptu spear if you need. You can get a good piece of wood if you're out in the forest. You can use it for hunting, fishing. I mean, there's a lot of good things you can do with the spear that goes beyond the simple way of just carrying a spear around. Also, having a long point at a distance on someone, at like a 6 to 8 foot distance, and having good point control. As someone who's done a lot of rapier, I don't train a lot of spear, but I fought some spear and I had no problems with it. No. Once you understand the basis of point control and you're good at using constrained lines and have good strength, a spear is a great weapon for anything. There's people here, they banned it from my province, but there's people in Alberta that actually hunt bear with spears. Really? And I was like, I'm pretty strong and I'm pretty dedicated, but I don't think I might be divorced if I tried doing something that stupid. But I give the guy who did it incredible props because the cojones on this man, the huevos, Jesus, they're just like elephants.
Well, I think there are still some people also in Europe that they hunt boars with spear.
But you're
that is also crazy.
Yeah, a black bear, like just man. Some of these black bears out here in Canada, 400 pounds. I've taken 400-pound boars, and there's much bigger than that. That's like a medium-sized,
Yeah.
large medium,
Yeah.
not like enormous.
Yeah, of course.
Oh,
I
we
mean,
got 2 questions more. Look at this.
great.
Great.
One from Peje del Futuro. Which
Who-
medieval weapon would you consider the hardest to master?
Okay, so let's start with one first. So what's his name?
Peje del Futuro.
Peje del Futuro. I probably butchered your name, and I'm sorry. And
Which medieval weapon would you consider the hardest to master?
which medieval weapon would you consider the hardest to master?
Wow. From the top of my mind, I would go probably with Montante or similar weapons because you have to control the weapon. I mean, you have the basic longsword mechanics, but then you have to come with the emotions. You have to learn how to stop, how to switch, how to move around. While staff weapons are really easy, and the sword it is versatile, but I wouldn't say it is so hard to master. And then saber for me, I think it is really really easy to learn and teach. So I would say from all the swords that I could think of right now, I would say the Montante or the Zweihanda would be my selection right now, because then also dual wielding like rapier and dagger and buckler, I don't find them so hard to learn. So I would say one of those, the Montante and the Zweihander.
I'm divided. I agree with you for your reasons on the Montante, and I'd say at the lower levels especially, it'd be harder to master. I would also add that we don't really have good Montante fencing swords, so
Yeah.
then it's mostly subjective, and so if you ever did were to fight with it, you might not get the adequate feedback in its usage. But the other one I would look at, and I would say rapier and dagger, is in my opinion the hardest weapon to really master.
Hmm.
I'm good at it. I don't think I'll ever master the rapier and dagger.
Yeah.
Because it's and anyone who says they're a master of it, like I mean, there's with the exception of maybe one person I've ever met, Rob Childs, I would say that there's probably, and even he's still learning and developing.
Yeah.
I mean, there is really no masters of this weapon. I mean, it is the combinations are endless. Every mistake, millimeter is punished with an extreme mistake if you're wrong. The better the fighter, that millimeter becomes fractions of a millimeter.
Yeah.
It's a very precise game. It's actually essentially like the sniper rifle or the scalpel of HEMA. People don't give it enough credit for what it's due. They treat it like a sport fencing foil. It's not that at all. And I mean, if you're to look at one guy doing stuff well today in this arena that I find very difficult fight, and I still haven't been able to beat him yet, so it says a lot about his skill.
Yeah.
Is Rob Childs. Like he
Yeah.
is, in my opinion, like, but he was doing this. He was doing this when I first came into this. Like he was a badass when I first met him, and I was like 25 or 24. So it tells you, and I'm 40 this year. So
Yeah.
that tells you how long he's been doing it. And I watched that guy, and I was like, that's the guy.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I mean, it's so in all fairness, yeah, rapier would be the thing. And what's our second question?
Question comes from one Pablo Sanchez Maria. How do you know when you're ready to start practice cutting?
Juan Pablo Sanchez Uria. When do you know you're ready to start practice cutting?
Well, I would say that if you know how to go through the basic motions, you should be able to start cutting. And I will declare myself guilty of not doing enough cutting in school, because I know it is essential, and we teach the cutting mechanics, but we don't go as much as I'd like into actual cutting. But I think that as soon as you know how to use the basic motions of the sword, you're ready to start cutting. But you are the expert on this subject.
Me, yeah, I cut a lot. I might be guilty of being a okay cutter. But seeing as like my student just ran your tournament down there with that, Jesse did a pretty good job. He's a very good cutter too, in all fairness to Jesse. He's great at it. But you know, when I look at cutting, I would say if I had my way, and I can have my way on my own property now, which is nice. I'm not restricted by the commercial space and commercial landlords, right? So, but I would probably have my guys, my newer students, cutting within the first 8 classes.
Yeah.
And when I say that, I would be like Arturo said, very basic movements. But I've had guys like one of my students, Gary, who's only in there for a month. I started cutting really early, and he was quite successful. He's very, very, very good with his awareness and how to strike properly. Man, honestly, like if you're training by yourself and you don't really have a lot of people to work with, building a cutting post and just doing cutting water balls with a machete is inexpensive, and it will get you doing something now. And once you learn edge alignment, which I will say is one of the hardest things to learn in any blade art, it gets screwed up so much. It is unbelievable. Guys who are masters, I've watched them fail to cut over and over and over again because edge alignment is poor. So if you learn edge alignment now, you're already saving yourself heartache, and you're saving yourself a crushed ego long term by doing that tomorrow.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, that is the basic thing you have to learn, and that many students of the art uh, neglect. It is the edge alignment, and the best way to actually practice is with actual cutting practice.
And it's funny because in HEMA, like you have people like, especially on the West Coast, it's the cutting mecca now. It started on the East Coast, Mike Edelson, but I mean, really, like the real hard cutting action is over here. And you see like really good guys, Phil Martin and stuff, also helping push this forward. And I look at cutting as super important. Like when I say it's important, like all my guys who want to compete, they want to cut, they need to cut. And it's because it is so fundamental in their understanding of the sword art. So
Yep.
imagine if you go your whole life with sword and you don't cut. But then I watch the same people. You watch people who cut in tournament versus people who don't. And there is a dramatic difference in how they move the sword and how they respect the weapon. The people who cut and can do like high level cuts, you'll see that they will throw cuts with rotation at targets because
Yeah,
they know what it takes to get through the target.
exactly.
Oh, you have another comment, Nicole?
Yes, we got quite a few actually.
Yeah.
Um, Word Dragon is asking, how do you see the future growing of the sport? Will it be as common as sport fencing, or has it more potential like boxing?
War Dragon says, what do we see the future of the sport, and what is the potential for the sport? Is it more like going to end up more like sport fencing or more like boxing?
Well, I think you and I share this vision for HEMA, and we try to see it more like the UFC. I don't think it's gonna grow in the direction of sport fencing, or it might, but I think if it happens, then it's gonna split, like it happened to Taekwondo. There are two federations for Taekwondo in the world, and I think that if some branch of HEMA would grow as sport fencing, it would split in two. But I think it could have a potential to be something similar to the UFC if we're smart about it.
I'm kind of with you on it. And realistically, I foresee you and I will probably end up working on something collaboratively to this effect, as we've talked previously. But to answer his question, with War Dragon there, I would say he's right. It'll probably split, if not fractionalize into a third non-fighting division.
Hmm.
Um, the problem is when you look at everyone trying to get their hands in the pie, HEMA has a great level potential because it's really sword fighting. And not to knock the sport fencers out there, but I mean, you guys, it's a pure sport, right? Just from a sports science perspective, it's nothing, not a burn or anything like that. It just is what it is. This is just a little harder. It hits a little harder. It's a little more intense. The grappling, fighting, like rounded fighting aspects.
Yeah,
Our closest cousins from a sports science perspective is mixed martial arts,
yeah,
and I mean, that's you see a lot of guys like you and I. We avidly follow mixed MMA. I mean, and there's a lot of things we can learn from what Dana White and crew have developed over the
yeah.
years. And I think that right there is the real future of HEMA. Um, do I think there'll be a sport fencing influence component that we see out of Eastern Europe right now? Yes, I do. Is it something I want to be part of? Not really. I don't really care if they do their thing. I think the world's a big enough place for everybody to do their thing.
Yeah. And the movement is big enough already to have different branches. And I think one of the mistakes we have made, well, it was, I know when we met, we
Yeah,
were such a small community around 10 years ago that everybody wanted to be friends with everybody.
yeah,
And we understood that we had to work together to grow. But right now we are so big and everybody wants so much different things that we are in a point where everybody can just pursue whatever their vision is and it wouldn't mind that much. And I mean, this is not the only sport this has happened to, and I agree with you. If we look at what Dana White and the UFC did to grow and we're smart about it, then we might have the opportunity to do something similar. You just have to go into History Channel and see all of these TV shows they have because people like it, like Fortune Fire, and they used to have full medieval jousting or full metal jousting, whatever the name it was. People like it. So from also the show perspective, there is a future in there, but we have to be careful. Also, we want to keep it real. So we have to find the balance, but I think that is the way we might look into in the near
I
future.
think within 5 years things will change. It'll be a different sport, and
Yeah.
I welcome the changes because guess what, the sports science is developing along with this. Like we've collected a lot of data through my coach TJ, and I mean things are just moving on the way up. Any more questions, Lover?
Yes, Nostradamus 21,000. What do you think about sword fighting in movies, and what movie is, in your opinion, the most accurate on representing a real sword fight?
All right, Nostradamus 21,000 asks us about movie fighting and what's our opinion on it and what we think is the best movie fight we've seen so far, or I guess TV sword fight, movie sword fight. And
Sword
so
fighting in movies.
I'll say TV series also counts for this, i.e. Game of Thrones, etc.
Okay. Yeah.
Not up there.
Okay. For context, I've been working with the the state university as a teacher for stage combat for actors for 7 years now, and well, I think that it goes from horrible to not so bad. So what I do with my students is I always show them what I think is the worst fighting scenes to some of the best. I think there are some horrible things like Game of Thrones. Like every time I see a fight in Game of Thrones, I try to gouge. I would ask the mountain to be on top of me and try to gouge my eyes out because it is so horrible the way they fight. Recently, I was watching Nightfall, also from History Channel. Also, they go so slowly that probably my grandmother could fight faster. Um, so it is horrible. Then Pirates of the Caribbean, it is a very good sport fencing portrait, but a very bad sword fighting scene, especially the first one, which is the only one I saw. And then there is people who say, like for instance, The Duelist. I think it is the name of the movie, which is pretty accurate. Many people find it boring, but I think it is closer to actual historical technique. Um, and of course, Kingdom of Heaven made an effort to have a few historical things in there, which is not great, but at least they tried. So those are some of those that come to my mind. I have a lot of videos. I have a specific playlist in my YouTube channel for that. And
Okay.
if I have to promote somebody in this matter and they don't get enough credit, it is these guys who are called like Adorea Olomouc, who are from the Czech Republic. They have amazing videos of stage combat using HEMA. And the speed they have, they move really fast, they are very precise, they use historical techniques, and they are not boring. So if you want to look very good stage combat, I would say Adorea Olomouc in YouTube. They are amazing.
I thought they were okay. I mean, I'm also a bit of a nerd on this too. Like, I mean, some of the stuff I've done, I'm like, no, it's not bad. Some of the stuff I'm like, it could be better.
Yeah.
Like I've worked closely with a stage and combat coordinator for a while, Thomas Potter. Within our school, he teaches stage and theater, so I'm pretty. I have a pretty good eye for this because I ask him. Even our demo fights, when we don't choreograph them, we do free form demo practice to make things interesting for the audience, and we've used his input on doing that. I am by no means a theater guy in that sense, but I'm a big movie buff. So I would say I would go as like the movie Ironclad. It's pretty good. Like, I mean, like I thought that was pretty good. I know there's no HEMA in Vikings, but I'm a big Vikings fan. So I mean, like I'm pretty sure that's all FMA from what I've seen, and I'm cool with that too because I really like my friends who do FMA and I really enjoyed the Filipino martial arts. So who else what do I look at? Man, Game of Thrones. I'm like, yeah, it's like great books. Love the writing, except for the last season. But man, did the fights suck. Arthur Dane, actually want Nicole and I almost threw something on our TV and wrecked it.
Yeah.
We're so mad. Like, man, I don't even like it was just so bad. What else did I really like? What else did I really think was like absolutely fantastic. You know, to be honest, I like The Witcher.
It is cool.
And you know what? I like the fact that when you talked about his training video, I seen his pre-training video, he talked about it. He knew what he was doing, and I was impressed. I was like, he actually knew how to train to be a swordsman, and that Henry Cavill did a good job.
Yeah.
A lot of people got upset about The Witcher, and I was like, you know, I watched it. I was like, it's gonna suck, and I'm like, damn, this is much better than Game of Thrones.
Yeah. Well, to your point, I think Vikings, from a Viking perspective, is horrible.
Oh
But
yeah,
from an
no pleasure,
entertaining,
guilty pleasure.
yeah. But the fighting is actually quite entertaining.
Yeah,
It is dumb, you know, because they scream like shield wall, and then immediately they break the shield wall. But
yeah, I
then they
know that's
break
all
it.
fun.
Yeah, but then they break it. They start fighting one on one, and the move sets are usually quite entertaining. So I agree with you. And for me, I always said this for the last 7 years: Vikings fighting is way better than Game of Thrones.
It
And
is,
then, yeah,
yeah.
and for instance, your co-national, what is her name? Alagerta, the actress.
Oh, Catherine Winnick.
Catherine
Yeah,
Winnick.
she national
She's
treasure.
really good. I mean, I've seen videos of her training for the movie, for the episodes. Amazing work.
Yeah,
And then,
she's a real martial artist though. So I
yeah,
mean,
exactly,
she can look the
exactly.
part and do the part. It's pretty awesome, actually.
You can tell she's an actual fighter. And then with The Witcher, a lot of people complain about how I mean, that he has fantasy moves and he grabs the sword by the
He's a
blade.
supernatural being.
Exactly, he's a Witcher,
Yeah, he's not you, and he's not me.
and he has magical swords, you know,
Yeah,
to kill beasts. So if you go into that mental frame, the fighting is actually pretty well done, and the speed, and you know, the pace for the fightings. I
I
like it.
expected a lot worse because of all the bitching in the Hema community. I expected
Yeah.
like a ton worse, and I was like, I watched it with my wife, and we're like, wow, this actually is pretty good. Like, I mean, was it perfectly historical? No. Was there historical elements? I suppose much as I can ask for in a movie. Was the cinematography nice and the actor looked real? Like Henry Cavill looked like a swordsman. Good biceps, nice
Yeah.
strong structure. This is what I was like. This is great. This is like in
Yeah.
that sense, he sold that role.
He did it very good. Yeah.
But you know what's funny about Vikings is our friend Lopez is in it.
Of course.
They take one of the world's top sword champions and make him an amputee. I mean, like when you consider they take his sword hand, I mean, I laughed so hard when I saw that. I was like, so we have a legitimate guy here now. I doesn't do a sword fight. He's an amputee.
Yeah.
He needed something to piss them off.
But yeah, so what else we got?
I was just thinking, somebody asked if you look at yourselves on HEMA ratings.
Oh, we got asked if we look on ourselves on HEMA ratings. I'll let you field that question first. Mine's a lot more my comments.
Well, I do it for fun. I haven't done it in a while. I can tell you a couple. Well, I'm frustrated. Let me tell you why. Because my best tournaments, like the year that you remember CombatCon, that I got the 4th place.
Yeah.
That tournament is not there. The couple of times that I was in the Netherlands fighting, those tournaments are not in there. Some of my national championships in Mexico are not in there. So there was a small time frame when I was the top Mexican in the HEMA ratings. But then it is a little frustrating because most of my fights, my biggest fights, are not in there. But I do check myself in HEMA ratings from time to time. I haven't done it in a while, but I have done it in the past.
For me, I check. I'm retired now from open competition. Like, I mean,
Yeah.
I'm still sparring and all that, so that's not a problem. But I mean, I'm retired from open competition. I'm not really interested. I made my 50. I'm good. And honestly, though, I find it Eurocentric. I don't like how the algorithm works. I'm not really a big fan of it. I think it's going the wrong direction. So if I was to say that, I mean, that's why I think it was a cool idea, but I think now you see people were like, just they have to, like, they're just essentially attached to their rating. It's like essentially their ego, and I only care about the moment. I don't care about about if this guy's stat against me, maybe he scored like 9 points on me. I don't care. I only care about the moment, and in that moment, how am I fighting? And to me, that data may be largely relevant to someone else. It's irrelevant to me as a fighter, as a tournament performer. If it stops me from going to a tournament, I just wouldn't go to the tournament anyway. I don't care that much. I know I rate fairly highly in that thing, or I did when I was actually active.
Yeah.
But I mean, do I check myself in human ratings? Yeah, I have, because everyone does. Do I care? Not really. I mean, anyone who spot me knows what I'm about.
Yeah. Yeah, well, the truth is, I agree with you. I think it is a good effort. I think it's a good tool to have, especially for the outsider. Like when you're presenting him at some people, especially companies you want to work with, and you can show there is a ranking and there is this. It is a good tool. But then we know the data is not complete. We know that many tournaments don't sell the information, so we know that the information is not really accurate. Although you know the people in top are most of the time the people on the top, like
Yeah, but
Martin.
you also see the guy, some of the guys on the top. Most of them land flat hits and crap like that, and just garbage touches. And you're
Yeah.
like, this is what it takes to get to the top.
Well,
Not
those are the guys who always win the tournaments for the most part.
it wasn't win.
Yeah. So I think it is a cool tool to have, but in the end, it is not so reliable yet. Maybe it might be of good use in the future. Maybe we don't know. We will see.
I would have
It
been
is
more
fun.
interested if it was broken down regionally. I'm not interested in what people are doing in Siberia, for
Yeah.
example. I'm
That is.
never going to go there. Might be some cool dude to come meet me in my school sometime, but that would be about it.
Yeah.
I mean, realistically, if I'm going to know something about someone, I'll just watch their videos.
Yeah, that is
I,
also an issue. I agree with you because in Mexico we have 2 or 3 tournaments a year, while the Slovaks have like 15. So if we only send 3 tournaments a year and they send 15, there is no way we're gonna compare to them. So that is also making it a little uneven. As I said, it might be a good tool. We will see in the future if we get into a bigger stage. But right now it is just fun, I think,
the,
an ego.
the other problem too is honestly economics, right? If you're in Europe, right, you can take an hour train somewhere and go fight another tournament in a different country. You and I just can't do that, right? Like Mexico's fairly big for most countries in the world, and Canada dwarfs Mexico. Like I mean,
Yeah,
our population is spread out. We have 37 million people, and I mean it's like 7,000 kilometers coast to coast. I'm on the far coast of one. If I want to go fight like Miles Kinney over in Nova Scotia, that is going to be 2 planes and going to be 10 hours to get there and
yeah,
$700 to $1,000, right?
yeah,
So it's cost prohibitive. And then there's the other problem you have is that you have skill, like you have vast skill disparity between clubs,
yeah,
vast, right? So in the local region, Blood and Iron has no problems. If I want to take every medal, I could. That's the fact. I've done it before. But so now we got to be careful. We got to go for our tournaments and be like, what's good, what's not, and then on top of it, if you're just winning, you guys aren't gaining anything. So it's like I got to fly here. I got to fly see you in Mexico. I got to fly down to California, right? I got to fly places to see people that are going to put up a really good fight. It's unfortunate, but that's just the case, right? You got to
yeah.
travel to get those people, and the higher level of your club is, the less clubs in the world there are to sharpen iron against iron. And I mean, that's not a nice thing to say. It's just the truth. No one likes hearing it, but it is what it is.
Yeah. The truth is always controversial. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
What's next one, Nicole?
Okay, they're asking you questions about kit.
Ooh, Kit.
Yes. Dragon is asking about program maintenance and the new level 2 special colors.
Okay, so there's 2 questions on gloves.
Yep.
War Dragon, and he wants to know about first the Pro Gauntlets. Well, War Dragon, I'm testing them right now. I'm going to leave it at that for right now because I'm not obliged to say what's going on. I have a pair of them. I have them within my view site, and as a Canadian distributor, I'm testing them. And so far, I like what I'm working with. But
Yeah.
I mean, when Steve's here in 2 weeks and we resume our intensive testing, our destructive testing, then I will start really putting the data down. I really like Yuval and Martin who've made the Pro Gauntlet. I think they're wonderful people, and I think that they're visionaries. No
Yep.
way of putting it. And so far, I love this product. in my testing, as far as I can say. But it still needs more testing for me to really go give it 2 thumbs up. As for Spec level 2, I haven't seen them. I heard they're even better. So, have you seen them yet?
No, the space I haven't. I tried the pro gauntlets last year in at CombatCon, and I think no, sorry, it was at Long Point, and I think they are as good as they promised. I didn't have the opportunity to fight with them, but I did use them for a class. So I was teaching with them. I requested them to teach with them during the whole class, and I used them for a couple of hours, and I think they are legit. They have taken too long for sure, but I think in the end it's gonna be worth it for us Mexicans, poor Mexicans. It is a little too expensive, but I think it's gonna be worth it in the end.
I'll counter that with how much your hand's worth.
Yeah, precisely.
That's the problem is we all work with our hands, so hand protection. We work with our hands, so hand protection is important, and our hands break easy, which is also important, right? Like I mean, you got to realize that your finger, if you're just wearing lacrosse gloves, you're essentially because you don't want to spend the money, and then you break your hands and you can't work. It just costs you a lot more money. It's better to. There's a saying here we have in Canada when buying like firearms or anything or vehicles. It's buy once, cry once.
Yep. Yeah, and we have a similar one in Mexico. And buy
Yeah,
cheap, buy twice.
I like that. It's really good.
Yeah.
So
So
yeah,
yeah,
as for the level 2s, I haven't seen them yet. Maybe Spec will get me a pair so I can look at them and try to break them again. But I do like the Spec lobsters for any beginner, especially longsword. The nice thing about Pro Gauntlet is that it changes the game for side sword, which is nice because I don't have to make a risk with like a reinforced red dragon, so I don't break
yeah,
my fingers again, or have to tape my fingers when I break them because I'm an idiot and I'll just keep fighting a tournament.
yeah. No, that is true. The pro gauntlet, it is very good also for side sword, rapier, sword and buckler, and that is the problem. I know you and I don't agree in this one because you like the space. I prefer the sparring gloves. That neither of them allow you to fight properly with side sword and the rapier, and the pro gauntlets will. So point for the pro gauntlets.
Yeah, you know what though? It's also climate difference, right? Your climate is drier, right? And the sparring gloves take about 18 months to degrade in the humid climate here. And
Okay.
the sour gum. It just at least in our experience,
Yeah.
as 18 months to 2 years, it's best lasts a little longer. The problem is when the sour gum goes, then it
Yeah.
breaks. And that's just a function of British Columbia's like cold and then hot, but still kind of humid, temperate rainforest. That's just
Yeah.
is what it is. I mean, and like Purple Heart had swords break in Arizona because it dried up so much there because it's so dry. So
Yeah.
just remember, guys, sometimes the gear, right, like where Arturo is, will function better in some climates. That's just facet of gear.
Yeah.
What else we got, babe? Oh, someone asked a question of who was name?
Here it is, Maximus.
Maximus?
Why would someone take a glaive instead of a halberd into a battle with armored foes?
Oh, okay. Maximus, why would someone take a glaive instead of a halberd into a battle with armored folks?
Perhaps they're more agile than hitting armor.
Is it more agile? I kind of see them as the same. Like, I mean,
Yeah.
they're not, but they're essentially the same kind of weapon.
I think the thing with the glaive was that it was a more accessible weapon. It was more like an agricultural weapon, while the poleaxe was a bit more fancy. I think that would be the only reason. Because if I was to choose, I would choose the halberd or the poleaxe. And I would agree that they are like almost the same thing.
Yeah, then consider this too. We still have a thing called a bush axe up here. That's very glaive-like that we use for clearing bush. So I
Yeah.
mean, yeah, I can see the agricultural tool behind that now that you mentioned it. So it might just have been something that is easier. It could also have been personal preference. A lot of fighters, I mean, they're gonna be like, I just like this better.
Yeah.
They don't know why. Maybe they just like it better. So there's personal preference too. I mean, in a battle like a mass battle, would I have a pole arm, a glaive, or halberd or poleaxe? You betcha. You bet, 100% though.
Yeah.
That's for sure.
Yeah.
Anything else, lover? No other questions so far? Okay, cool. Let's go back to whatever we're going to talk about.
Yeah. So there is something I would like to talk about for a minute, if you allow me,
Sure,
Lee. And
please.
it is I know you have so many followers, and we are growing our channel in Mexico. And I was talking to this about the Latin America folks. So if you are watching at us, I would just ask you to go and check in our channel because we're producing a lot of information. Blood and Iron is a great channel, and we're trying to do something similar, but for the Spanish speakers. So if you speak Spanish and you're looking for material in Spanish for HEMA, please make sure you check on Krieger Escola. I will. I don't know if we can add something in later so
Yeah, you can
people
just
can
type
check
it
it
in,
out.
you can type it in the chat. We'll type it in
Yeah,
the chat or something like that.
exactly. Yeah. So if
Or
you
one of your
speak
students who's
Spanish,
watching can type it in the chat.
yeah, yeah. Actually, that is right. I have it. I have it right here. I'm
Yeah,
checking
you
the
tell them.
comments also. So if you would just want to check it, we have some content in Spanish, also techniques, and we also have podcasts. So just make sure you check it out because we're producing a lot of HEMA content in Spanish for Latin America and Spain. We know there are a lot of good channels, especially Blood and Iron in English, but we want to make information available for the Spanish speakers across the globe.
And some people don't speak English, right? That's a really big thing. Although it's the world's most commonly spoken language, essentially it's the trade language of our day. I mean, there are a lot of people out there who want to learn HEMA who don't speak English. And I mean, that is a definite language barrier. I can see more and more people bringing these to different languages. I think it's a really important long term for the growth of the art. Like you look at wrestling, a lot of wrestlers and stuff. Not every wrestler speaks English,
Yeah.
but they
Yeah.
have so they have representative countries in 100 countries.
Yeah. And well, it is the second most spoken language in the world after Chinese. And also, did you know that the second country with most Spanish speakers in the world is the US?
Oh, of course.
Yeah, it is Mexico and then the US. But well, and you have great Cuban fencers, great Cuban wrestlers, great Cuban boxers, and many of them don't speak uh, English. So we're trying to set up this platform for people in Latin America and Spain to have more information available for them. Something like what you are doing with Blood and Iron, but in a baby version because we are just producing.
You know what? You know what? You're a smart guy. 1 second, Nicole. We need a new battery.
Oh, battery for what?
Camera.
Camera?
1 second, guys.
You've been at it
Yeah,
for 7.
I'm still with you here, so
Yeah,
don't
all
worry.
good. I am still here, people. I am still here. Don't worry. The camera battery, because of COVID, we ordered another a full power jack, but it just hasn't got here yet.
No.
I mean, shipping on everything has been really slow.
Yeah, they
Funny
have.
enough, my funny enough, a LED grow light I bought for hot peppers, because I teach in Mexico quite a bit. I go there a lot, and I'm kind of addicted to your guys' salsa. I'm not gonna lie, I love hot salsa. I really love authentic Mexican food, not
Yeah.
like the crap we get here. Can you please make sure it's focused again, please? Get the thing. Sorry, my technician, who's also Nicole, is just going to refocus the camera.
Well,
You have to go to
have a.
focus first.
Okay.
All right, now we're back on,
There you
and then
go.
go back to manual focus. We're good. Thank you.
Okay. Look at this
Awesome.
sheet.
Sorry, guys.
I have a couple of questions that come up, but I'll put this in the charger first.
But yeah, I'll just finish. We were talking about like Latin America, and this is important because what you're doing really can affect positively the lives of hundreds of millions of people. Millions and millions of people will be affected positively through this. And when I tell you guys, like, I love Mexico. I've been there. Like, you were the first to bring me down there, and I was like, oh man, it could be pretty bad. Like, you hear all the stories up here in Canada. I went down. I mean, it's probably one of my favorite countries to visit. I just always have a good time. People are awesome. I have great friends like Arturo, like my friends Nava Delgado's down there, the Nava brothers, right? Everybody knows them, like Rodrigo and all sorts of guys like down there, and Roberto. I had better mention him, but who I really enjoy their company, and they're good people, and like, I mean, I'm coming down there once COVID clears. We're just waiting on this right now for, as you know, for a seminar. I was supposed to come down in April, but COVID.
Yeah.
COVID, the government's like, you aren't leaving. So yeah, I am coming down there, guys. My seminar is to be decided, and it's largely dependent on
Might be a while.
and by the way, it's largely dependent on two largely incompetent governments.
Yep.
One, the Mexican government, And I'm sure Arturo will agree they're not very competent. And
Well,
to the Canadian government, also not, they're really not competent.
North American politics are doing a great job lately, so yeah.
Also, so basically we're on par.
Yeah.
This one is
So,
for Camargo.
Yeah, Camargo got one for you, actually.
Eduardo Ibarra. The last thing I was expecting to see while searching caldo de palo recipes on YouTube is Arturo Camargo's face.
What is
Making
it?
a great job. This right here.
Ah,
Just
what does it say? I'm taking a look here.
Yeah.
The last thing I was expecting to see while searching caldo de pollo recipes on YouTube is Arturo Camargo's face. You're making a great job for the Hime community in Mexico, my friend. Oh, that's nice.
we are everywhere. We are just using all the tags. Okay, so
I have a
I'm
question.
glad. I'm glad we're taking in the Mexican Hima name across the globe.
I love it.
Yeah, Zephyr 117. What do you think is more effective for blocking, a buckler or any larger shield?
Zephron 117. What's more effective for blocking, a buckler or a shield?
For blocking, just for blocking, I would say the shield. But if you know how to use it, the buckler is a very versatile weapon, and I think that is one of the reasons it thrived across the medieval ages. It is because it was way easier to be transported than the kite and the smaller shields. But I think, I mean, for blocking, of course, you need a shield because it is bigger. But I think it's more versatile to have the buckler.
Like, unlikely you're just going to carry a shield, a heavy shield everywhere unless you're going to war, right?
Yep.
I look kind of like something for war. But for personal defense, having a buckler on your side next to your sword, people did it for a reason because it was convenient. It's cheap and easy to make a buckler. Probably a lot more expensive and laborious to make a shield. And then, I mean, on top of it, carrying the thing around all the time. Imagine carrying like your 10-pound shield on your back everywhere you go. You're gonna be like, God, this sucks. People didn't change that much. I mean, we're lazy creatures regardless. Like, now everybody's like, hold on a second, I gotta take the shield off my back to fight. We use sword and buckler. A lot of them just had belt clips. They just clip it off and pull their sword and good to go.
You can just put it in the same belt that you have your sword, so it is more practical. I mean, if we were to compare it to right now, we could say that the buckler is more like maybe like a Glock 9mm, and you have the shield being like an automatic rifle. In the end, the rifle is gonna be better for shooting, but it's gonna be easier to carry around a Glock, right? So
yeah, for everyday purpose, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And you probably see the buckler more for personal defense.
Yeah. Also, something to remember is that the buckler should be used with the sword for parrying. That is the best thing to do. Not try to use the buckler to parry alone, which you can do, but it's not what the masters advise for the most part. While the shield you can actually use for just parrying, right? So there you go.
What's up, Nicole? Anything else for us?
Okay, this is kind of interesting. Well, GL is asking, does Senior Smith speak Spanish? Perhaps a few words of courage for starting a Hima community in Paraguay.
Oh, okay. And that's Guillermo?
Yeah.
Nicole's not the best at...
Let me check. I have it right
Oh,
here.
it's Guillermo, GL. No, I do not speak Spanish yet. I am actually, once everything kind of returns to normal here, I just moved. I'll resume my Duolingo lessons and start going back to learning at least some kind of conversational Spanish.
But you can introduce yourself in Spanish, Lee.
I can. Fuck, now I forgot. Now you have me on the spot.
But okay, in the meantime, that Lee remembers how to say "Hola, me llamo Lee."
Me llamo Lee Smith.
Yeah.
And I forgot how to say like kick some ass, but but I will say training Hima in Paraguay, right? Paraguay, muy bien, super chingón.
That is Mexican slang, but I think he's gonna get it.
I know. I mean, I'm working on it. It's funny you get put on the spot. When I go down to Mexico, by the time I leave, I'm starting to be able to order in Spanish and stuff.
Yeah.
And ask where the washroom is. Task the person for a beer.
Yeah.
Like dos cervezas, dos manos. I mean.
There you go. And also, he also, Guillermo and the rest of the people who speak Spanish, Lee had to learn how to say sin queso por favor, because that is very important for Lee. Sin queso, por favor.
Yes, cinque for yeah. And then now that you know what the other one was too, is trying to give commands as a judge in Spanish.
Oh yeah.
Like punto blanco. I remember that. Punto azul.
There you go.
I mean,
Yeah.
and
Alto.
yeah, alto. Yeah. like I mean, that was pretty funny. I'm like, okay, so what are my list of basic commands? Do you speak Spanish? No. Oh, well, this will be interesting. Yeah, having to judge and direct a tournament in Spanish, and not so much for most of your staff speaks English. It's
Yeah.
mostly for the fighters that
For the
don't
fighters.
speak a lot.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
that's
you're
true.
gonna get used to it.
And it is fun to see you do that.
Oh, you know what? I bet if I bet first, like, so when we had our buddy, you know Tony Delgado, right? Like from Marte,
Yeah.
he was up visiting. It's always funny to hear someone working to learn the language, and it's not funny in a malicious manner. It's funny just in general.
Yeah, exactly.
But sometimes he gets like the context wrong, right? So we're at this restaurant, and he's like, "What beer is good?" And we're like, "I'm like, oh, we have a really good beer here called Fat Tug. I really like it. It's really good. It's one of the few IPAs I like." And so he says to the waitress, he gets a context. He's like, "I'd like a Fat Tug, please." Well, that says other connotations, and I'm like, I explained to it after, but he just wanted that beer because I was like, "This is a great beer," and he's like, "Okay," and he just went for it. But all props to him. He's also using Duolingo to learn English. So when you kind of look, huh?
Oh, I was just saying. Apparently, Guillermo is actually Mexican, living 13 years in South America, then Argentina, then Paraguay. So he did understand.
Oh, he did understand. He's Mexican. Sweet.
Nice. Okay, so Guillermo, sorry, so just for a small note, Guillermo, if you want to start something in Paraguay, make sure to just send us a message in Krieger Escola. We're based in Toluca, Mexico, and we're happy to help set up a new community in Paraguay if it doesn't exist. I was just in a meeting with Chileans and Argentinians, and we just want to grow the South American community. So please send me a message, and we will set something up for you in Paraguay.
Exactly. And you know what? If you speak English, you can always take our classes too. We have online classes as well. In fact, it's something I haven't really discussed, but most people don't realize that we hold you'll find this interesting. We have a developing world discount for our online program.
Nice.
So it's basically half price. So it's like if you have your G20 countries, obviously they can afford the full price. But we basically made half price for a lot of the developing world, and which is good for because in Mexico, obviously, people don't make as much money.
No, of course, no. I mean, I follow for my training a very good club, but the prices they charge for online training, for barbell training, it is, for me as a Mexican, it is insane. But I know they are a very good club. But this is really important. I'm gonna be bold enough to say it openly in YouTube and the open network. But something I hate is people encouraging people to start their own groups when they have no experience. I mean, this was acceptable 10 years ago when we didn't have the experience and we didn't have the tools to train. But right now, having the same issue like we have been going through for 10 years, like, you just start your own club, you have no idea, you know how to carry the sword, how to stand. Just start your own club and start teaching. And it's like, what? Why? If we have so many resources now. So it is so cool that we have more curricula going on the internet, so we can have better schools, better prepared, even when they don't have the tools at hand in their own city, but now they can access these different programs as the one you have, so they can develop faster and better as a new school or community.
And it's one of the things that's important too to look at too. The more languages you speak, the more access you have to different teachers.
That is also
and the cool part about that is, and in this age of information, it allows you to take classes. If you want to take some from Arturo, for example, and then to take some from me down the road, you could do those things, and it would just nothing but give you well-rounded student. And that's like when you kind of look at that, when you choose good teachers like Arturo and I, we always talk, right? And so you have all these great options, and as he said before, it's important because now you just started your own group. I would have died to have this level of instruction available to me when I started. Instead, I suffered through it. There's some local stuff that I didn't really like, and that was not going to work for us. I came from essentially a proto-combatives background, and so I wasn't able to deal with a lot of crap, and so.
Yeah.
And I mean, we all hit the HEMA scene around the same time. All the serious fighters, at least we see in the community, and then now we have a second generation of those fighters as well. But back when we started, there was like a distinct group of people that came from serious martial arts that pushed this community forward,
Yeah.
and undoubtedly.
Yeah, and you see here we have a comment for Vordragen that says that don't invent the wheel while we are busy inventing the car, and that is exactly it. I mean, you and I don't know how many years you have been into HEMA. I've been into HEMA for 12 years. We have made all the mistakes we can make. We know how things are gonna go, and still we have people encouraging people to make those mistakes. And it's like, why would you when we could be ahead 10 years because you don't have to make all of those mistakes we made 10 years ago, and you start fresh, but with somebody. I mean, for me, it is the same. The only reason we started Cricket Escola in Mexico 12 years ago, it was because there was nobody in the city to teach me. Otherwise, I wouldn't have started the project.
We basically just didn't have anyone on this path. We had people we could learn sword fighting from. Was it very good? No. So I built my own thing. I needed my own. I had my own training partners, and we built from our SCA group. So, and honestly, I didn't like the dress up aspect of SCA. So for me, it was like we were just my wife and I were just there to fight with swords. I went to an event in
Yeah.
Germany and then realized, holy crap, I don't have to dress up anymore. Boom, that was it. It was awesome. I was like, no costumes, no costumes. Just like my training gear, like I normally train in. Yes, awesome. That's just
Yeah.
more my thing. I don't judge if people want to go in the SCA and do their thing there either. It's I kind
No,
of
I mean,
again, I see everybody as having their ability to practice as freely as they want. Some like I said, we had talked earlier. Some cultures of different schools simply won't ever work together.
and everybody has the right to do whatever they want to do, right? We
This
start
one's
doing
not hurting
reenactment
anybody.
also. Yeah. And this is a funny story exactly about what you just said. Not many people know about this story. Um, 12 years ago, 10 years ago, Scott Brown came here for the first time, and Roberto Martinez Loyo organized the workshop. He invited me. But in that time, we were doing like reenactment, and I was still in the mindset of you have to dress up and you have to go camping, right? So he tells me there's this instructor coming from the US, and I was like, oh, probably he's an old master and he's gonna be dressed up like Lichtenauer, right? And the minute I met Scott Brown, you know Scott, and he was just laying on a wall, smoking a cigarette, wearing commando shorts and socks and shoes, and I was like, he's too young and he's smoking. This cannot be the grandmaster that I was looking for. And then, and I come and I was like, are you teacher? And he was like, yes, I am. And I was, oh my god, why is he not dressed up? And for the whole weekend, I was asking him, how do you dress for tournaments? Where do you have them? Do you fight in the grass? Do you camp? Because I had all this idea that it was, as you said, like the SCA. That was the mindset I had. The minute he showed me how the things were being done for swordfish, and it was a year before the first Fractional America. Then, as you said, I was like, oh, so I can go normal. I don't have to dress up, and
And
this is
that's
more like athletic than reenactment. So I like that.
but yeah, that's an important thing. Before we take our next question, I'll add one more thing we kind of glossed over. A lot of people will spend a lot of money on their gear and their swords, but they don't spend any money on training. That's probably if you were to be smart, you spend more money on your training and then have basic swords then move up from the expensive ones.
Okay.
Oh,
Well,
sorry, I'm
We
getting
got
the
Menlo Lara.
sorry, getting
Karen
the
yeah.
wants to know what you recommend to stick to one author or source, or to learn from many different ones, taking the parts that work better for you.
okay name again.
Manuel Lara Khan.
Manuel Lara Khan. So, and the question is,
What we recommend to stick to one author or source, or to learn from many different ones, taking parts that work better for you.
all right. So he asks to stick to one source. Do we stick to one source
Do you stick to one source or learn from
or
many
learn
different ones?
from many different ones?
Oof. My advice right now, I don't know if you're gonna agree, but advice right now is to start with not one source, but one style. For instance, I like to do Rengek, but I always cross-reference with Von Danzig and Jutlo. but I don't like to mix that with Mayer because they are slightly different. So what I did is I decided to just go with one style in the beginning. Well, not really. In the beginning, I made the mistake to try to cover too many different sources. But then I learned that if I stick to just one, and I would actually learn that one properly, was better. Especially, for instance, the German system has too many weapons, so you have a lot of information. If you already know what to do, I would advise that. If you don't know what to do yet, well, maybe you should try a few different things. But I don't like mixing styles. I'm a little bit of a conservative in that aspect, so I rather just to stick with one style. After I got a grip into my style, then I started exploring a few different other styles, like the Scottish broadsword, which is other thing we do in Kruger Schola. But I mainly stick to my style. That is my opinion.
Okay, so then I'll counter with that. My thought is very different. I actually am a Meyer. I'm a Meyer fan, like a big Yoshi Meyer fan. Blood and Iron's basis is Yoshi Meyer, and that's just the fact. We see all other material as reference material.
Yeah.
So for us, we focus on Meyer. We take what's the most useful parts of it, and then we will bring in pieces of Fiore, pieces of Ringing. I am not a purist by any sense. I have never been a purist in throughout my martial arts career. I had a very good teacher growing up named Bill Wolf, and he taught us like basically you take what is useful, discard what is useless. And I have followed that advice throughout my entire career. And I mean, I would say right now, what you see out of us is Meyer is our cornerstone, right? Our foundation. But what you see from us now is essentially a blood and iron style of fighting. And you're starting to see this emerge from different schools. And now the teachers have a basis, the foundation, there's a foundation for the fighting style. And then now they're gonna have their own flavor on top of it. And I would go as far as saying it's probably what Meyer intended, considering that there are other influences, clear influences when you read his book and go through his manuscript, and it with throughout his school. Like he has Italian influences. People don't want to talk about that, but he does, right? Is he? I would even argue, and this will make a lot of German practitioners mad, that Meyer is the most complete version of Zettel we have.
Well, I can agree with that, Lee, that if you have a strong foundation, then you should actually start looking to other things because there is a point where you have to learn more things. And that is what I did, for instance. Once that I focused for a couple of years in Ringek, but eventually when I wanted to learn side sword, then I moved back to, and also Dusak. Meyer is my main source for them. And especially for Dagger. For Dagger, we actually take from a lot of different because we only consider what we think is best for our current context. So I agree with you, but I think that we have to go, as you said, from a specific cornerstone. For you is Meyer, for me is Ringek, and from there you can build. But in the beginning, I think that mixing too many styles, it is not as good. But in the end, I mean, to become a master in the medieval times, you have to go under 3 or 4 different masters. 10 years with one, and then moving around for 5 years. You had to learn different ideas, and that is also something that I try with my students. It is like this is what I'm gonna teach you, but then I will have Lee and Martin and Axel and so many other instructors come to you so you can learn different perspectives because my perspective is not the only one that is correct or valid. So I try to expose them to different opinions as well. So I think it's good to have different reference.
100% is good to have different references. I'm pretty extreme on when we do this. I have a list of people they should look at, fight with, or learn from.
Mhm.
And I mean, you're clearly on that list, right? But that's because you're here. But there is there's a list of people I'm like, there's like unknowns, knowns, and like avoids. And unfortunately, too, it's like you have to be discerning when you're learning this art because there's just a lot of charlatans out there in martial arts. And the first thing I tell people is watch fight videos.
Yeah.
And watch their students fight videos. And if you don't see consistent performance, especially regionally, you should probably question what you're learning.
No.
That's I upsets a lot of people to say that, but it's
It is.
Oh,
it
we
is
got
always-
we got a
Okay.
question this leads up into, Arturo.
Okay, cool.
Gonzalez is asking, who's the best longsword fencer in your opinion and why?
Leonel Gonzalez
Yep.
is who is the best longsword fencer in your opinion and why? That's a tough one.
It is a tough one. Well, you're retired, so I'm gonna
I still
think
fight.
about. Yeah, well, I'm just gonna think about those who are competing right now. And for me right now, and I know you're not gonna agree completely on this because you have a few issues with his performance, but I really like a lot Martin Fabian and Anton Kohutovic.
All right, so I'll counter that. I respect them for what they're doing. I don't think a lot of it's martial, but I mean that's my own opinions.
Yeah,
I'm very focused on martial application and triangulation of training. Of all the people I fought, I will say that Axel Persson is probably the best longsword fencer I've fenced
yeah.
by a long shot. Like,
Well, I
and no
think
offense to you even, but when I say for me the best fighter I've fenced to date and pushed me to the level that I've been at, he would be the guy
that Axel at his prime,
as prime. Yeah,
is yes, he is the best. I said I was going with the active ones, but historically in the last, I mean, HEMA has been around like top competition for the last 10 years. Axel dominated 7 of those 10 years, and then he's also very careful.
only a few people could stop the guy, and that was it.
Yeah, and he always has tried to be really technical. He tries to incorporate historical technique into his fighting. He's very precise with timings. So yeah, I agree with that. I mean, in the
I
whole,
don't like a lot of the modern longsword stuff we're seeing right now. Anyway, that's why I reference Axel over the rest because I've seen it degrade over the last 5 years into what is it's not martial arts anymore. It's essentially just sportified longsword fencing, and that's my problem with what I'm seeing right now. I'd like to see more of a return to the martial art for this.
yeah, yeah, but Axel, it is for sure in
He's
that
a serious
list.
martial artist, man. Like that's
Yeah,
instant is. That's really when I kind of look at it from that perspective. And when we separate the tournament, like the tournament, if we look at the triangulate, it leads into something else to talk about. We lead into what we call a triangulation of training. Remember how we started with talking about cutting? Well, this is what we talk about the triangulation of training. The tournament is not if the tournament's your end goal is sport.
yeah,
That's it. If your goal is martial arts, that means that you have to participate in a triangulation of training. And there are essential parts of that. And part of that is physical fitness. Like you're out in the gym, you're working out, you have programs, and you probably have a conditioning coach if you're wise, as
yeah,
well as your normal coach, or your coach is the registered conditioning coach, which is even better. Two, and this is really important, you're cutting. You need to be cutting. If you're not cutting, you are training for pure sport. That's just a fact.
hmm,
Three, you need to be sparring. If you're not sparring, again, you're just doing like the art portion, not enough martial.
yeah,
And then after that, you have your drilling and learning in the club, and you need to be doing those four things. I use term triangulation because that's the term everyone uses.
yeah,
But if you aren't doing those things and all of them, you're not really doing a martial art. You're more geared for pure sport, and that's your
yeah.
thing. That's fine. I don't consider it good longsword fencing, unfortunately. I look at it from if there's risk taking, if there's too much risk taking behavior for gains and high levels of double hits, that to me is not martial arts
Yeah,
or
I'm,
fencing.
I'm gonna share with you something really funny because there is a misconception around some places in Mexico, and I've heard they say that we only focus on winning tournaments and sport part of HEMA, which I know is not true. And some of my students always find funny to learn because they think we don't do enough fighting because they like to fight. But I agree with you. I always tell and this is part of our instructor curricula, and it is part of our instructors certification internal program. We always tell them that they have to understand the footwork as a specific set of the training, the technique, the conditioning, and the strength, and the fighting. And these are the four. As I said, we are not doing nearly as much cutting as I'd like to be doing, which is also related to the spaces. For us, it's not so easy to have cutting spaces. But at least these four aspects of the art, of course, also the theoretical part, they have exams they have to also go through to prove they have the knowledge from the manuscripts. So you have to have all of these things integrated into your training because we're making a martial art, and you have to bring all the uh, culture and all the tradition together. And part of the tradition is fighting, but also is the physical training, and also it is the theoret- theoretical part. So yeah, you have to integrate it as a martial art. If
And
you
it's
just want to
theoretical.
win,
Yeah, the theoretical part's important because that when you understand the anatomy behind it and like what a thrust does, what a cut does. I mean, this is something that just you can't really teach unless you're teaching it on medium.
yeah,
You got another question? I hear you over there. Nope,
Yep.
we're good. We can continue. We can just continue now. Yeah, nice. But yeah, honestly though, when we look at like the sport aspect, that's kind of a really big thing for me. Is a sport versus anything.
hmm
So and like it, and like I said, like when I look at swordfish now, the modern swordfish tournaments, I see some finals are really martial, really nice, and I'm like, but never in longsword. I'm sorry, I'm not very impressed with the longsword out there. I know that people get mad at me for saying that, but it's life. But I kind of look at like where it's gone. It just isn't the flavor. Like would I go to a tournament like that? I would never spend money to go to a tournament like that.
yeah,
Did I like it back in the day? I think it could have. I think the best European tournament I ever been to back in the day was the ILHG and the very first couple ones that were
yeah.
held. And I mean, I thought those were probably the best I'd been to, and they had a good blend of sport and martial culture. I thought that Lopez did a good job on that personally.
Yeah. It was a good event. We hope to have it back soon. We had plans to do have well, I was involved with the organization the last couple of times, and we were talking to about having it last year, but there were a few things, personal situations and things also in the organization that didn't work out, so we couldn't have it back last year. And hopefully after the pandemic is over, we will work into having another ILHG or something similar in the Netherlands. That is the plan, and we want to keep it precisely that traditional feeling, to the event, because that is something also I like about that event. It was really tradition focused. It was also a nice location in the middle of Europe.
He does have a real eye, doesn't he, on just
Yeah.
choosing the right location, and he has amazing that party he threw when we were there at that time.
The
Wow.
Archeon is a beautiful place. It is almost like tradition for the event. It is a beautiful for the people who hasn't been into the ILSG. It is like a small villa that it is based on actual medieval town. It was rebuilt in somewhere near Utrecht in the Netherlands. So it is a place where we used to have dinner after the event. It's a beautiful place. Yeah, and that is the favorite part of many people that they go to the event.
It's just, and the food is outstanding, the drink's outstanding. I mean, when you've been fighting for 2 days and you're beat to shit and you're tired and sore, you just want to go out and you want to have a nice cold beer and eat a whole pile of meat and just relax at the table with your friends
Yeah,
and have a good time. I mean, even the music was good. I mean,
yeah.
no complaints. Like, and I mean, that's something that, I mean, swordfish for me just didn't do it for me in that sense.
But in the end, I mean, we have to be fair, and there is no event in the world that can compete to Mexican steaks after the fighting.
Oh, that's a good. That's, I have to say, Mexican food after all the fighting is pretty good. Like, I mean, for what you get too on top of it, it's been pretty awesome. With that said, though, I won't lie. I have been some pretty good Vegas events.
Oh,
Las
well,
Vegas. I mean, if you're really like for bang for buck, though, I don't think anything can beat the Mexican food culture for in terms of how much you get for the price.
yeah,
And people don't seem to realize in North America when you go down there, the food quality is exceptionally high, produce quality especially.
yeah.
You can get beer pretty much anywhere. If you want to have a beer with your meal, you can do it, and it's not a big deal.
Yeah. Yeah, well, also, I mean, Las Vegas is a whole experience, and that is what I love about going to Las Vegas. It is not just the fighting, it is the atmosphere you get from the city. And also this, the last couple of times I was there, you just go from your room to the pool party and then get ready for the tournament and be in the tournament and then go out for the casinos and for the shopping and everything. And very nice restaurants. There is one of my favorite restaurants is there it is in Las Vegas. So yeah, they also have very good food. But if I had to choose in between Mexican steaks and something else, I would go for the Mexican steaks most of the time.
I will say Mexico beef is pretty good, but Alberta beef is better. And when you
I
come
have
up
to.
here, when you come up here, I'll have to make it happen.
I
Because
will have to try.
Alberta beef and Texas beef are pretty much on par.
Texas
And
beef is also very good. Yes.
like, I mean, the best steak I ever had was at a Houston event,
Yeah.
back at the Old Festival Americas. We went to that steakhouse,
Yeah.
and I ordered that gigantic steak with
Yeah.
and him and I just like ate the steak and ribs. He said he wanted to have the most American meal he could possibly have. So he had like a 30-ounce steak and half a stuff and half of they're like, do you want something to the side with a side of fries with ribs? And we're like, yes.
Yes. Yes.
Yes.
Exactly. But I mean, let's be honest. The best meal we ever had at Fictional America was Juanita's.
Oh my God. Don't even get me started. Let's go to Mexico. It was great for us Canadians because at the time we couldn't get real Mexican food here.
I was a little insulted.
You know what? You have every right to be insulted. Do you think you go for Texas barbecue or something unique to Texas?
Precisely.
I mean,
Well,
but no, they did take us for Texas barbecue though that time.
yeah, but let's be honest. What is more Texan style than Mexican food, right?
Oh man, get some mad Texans on this one. That's for sure. But yeah, and that's the thing too. Is like the food. Like when I travel, for me, food culture is really big. So if I go somewhere, I have to be eating food. Like I recently taught in China in August, and they're like, "What do you want for food?" I'm like, "I want to eat whatever you're eating," because I
Did you
want
eat
to know.
bat?
Huh?
Did you eat a bat?
No, that wasn't offered. My hosts were awesome. I said just nothing really strange, just like normal everyday kind of stuff. And man, Shanghai food was awesome. It was like literally excellent. Um, and my hosts were just amazing people, and it was just a cool experience. But yeah, honestly, definitely the most. Imagine Mexico City with just like Vegas wealth.
Yeah.
It's just the most rich city I've ever been to.
Yeah. I mean, Cantonese food is also amazing.
Well, that's Hong Kong.
Yeah. No. I mean, Cantonese. My nobody, no, not a lot of people know this, but my great grandfather was Cantonese.
Really?
So
Wow.
yeah, my mother's grandfather was Cantonese. So her family has a huge tradition of Chinese food. Every birthday for my mother, we would go to the same Chinese Cantonese restaurant in Toluca. I will take you next time you're here.
Is
It
it
is
good?
very nice. It is very traditional. So I like Chinese food a lot, but the more traditional one.
My grandfather on my father's side, he's British and well, not like British Isles, and he basically came from Hong Kong, and his father before him helped build the first built Bank of Hong Kong, like was an engineer actually constructing the thing.
Nice.
So we have like a lot of stuff in the family, like Chinese and the Cantonese antiques,
Yeah.
and that they brought back from there. And I mean, some of the jade work is stunning, but most people don't know that. I mean, people travel all over the world. They come from different places. I've always wanted to go to Hong Kong. It's one of the places I'd want to see. But I
Yeah.
mean, eventually that's just the plan. Anything else in there, babe? You got no more questions? Anything else we want to talk about
Comments
today?
on steak. Um,
Anything else we want to talk about today?
There is just one more thing I would like
Sure.
to tell people about. I don't know if you remember the project we have about knights training, which is about how knights used to train in medieval times. I released an article about that 4 years ago, and now we're catching up on that. And we are gonna be releasing the episodes hopefully by next year. But right now I'm trying to do like live updates about my training, doing weight training, going running, hiking, whatever is related. And I'm also releasing a few articles, short articles in Facebook and the official page, which is a night's training in Facebook. So if you're interested in medieval training, this is actual medieval training from sources like Pietro Monti and Bosicot, who was a marshal of France, and of course Vegetius, who is Roman, but it was a huge source for the medieval authors. Just check the page so you get more information. And if you can support the cause, please, you're welcome to do so because there's a lot of resources we have to pour into the project so we can deliver what we want to deliver to the people.
Yeah, buying armor, I would imagine you probably spent a small fortune on it.
Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
we got the sponsors for that.
Oh wow, lucky.
Yeah, we have Cult of Athena. They gave us some armor.
Oh,
We
that's
have
nice.
Purple Heart Armory. They also gave us a few things. And we also had Space USA. So we have a bunch of sponsors. And thanks to them, we got most of the the props for the production. But still, we have to pay for classes because we're going to experts, to horse riding, wrestling, gymnastics, everything. We're gonna get a proper instructor, and then we have to be moving from locations. We actually, I don't know if you knew about this, but 2 years ago, we went to the volcano, and I was wearing the armor, and I climbed the volcano wearing the armor.
Oh my God.
Yeah, it was crazy.
You'd have to live there. I almost died on that volcano at one time trying to climb up the asthma and the sword and the gear on my back. I mean, that was tough as it was, but you climbed with the armor. It's
With the armor.
insane. You must
Yeah.
have been tired.
It was tiring. We woke up around 6 in the morning. We drove up there, and when you park the car, I put on the armor and I just climbed the volcano wearing the armor. But I had to. It was a little bit like when you were here. I had to stop like every 5 minutes to rest, and then on the way back, I had to remove some pieces of the armor because it was getting a bit harder to, especially going back. The grips were getting into my knees, so it was like, okay, just remove the grips. It is grips, right, for the
That grieves.
for
Yeah.
for the shin bone. Yeah, but it was a really nice experience, and there is also a very interesting information. It is that Toluca's volcano. It is only a few meters smaller than Mont Blanc, which is the highest peak in Europe.
Yeah, and I'm gonna tell you, if you come from the coast like I do, sea level, when you go up that thing, once you're even at the normal place you go, which is pretty high up, you don't want to go any further. Like I had to sit and puke afterwards. It was brutal.
Yeah.
But it's just acclimatization. You're in this environment. So for you, what's a few more thousand meters? For
Yeah.
me, like 14,000 like what feet above sea level was it?
2,500 or something.
Oh
around.
yeah, it's 2,500 meters, right?
Yeah, meters. Yes.
Yeah, it's high, and I mean you're not used to it if you. I know it's more than that, but Nevada, like what you call it, the
Nevado de Toluca. Yeah.
yeah, it's like I think it's 14,000 above sea level.
Let me check. Let me check. I have it right now, so we don't lie to your followers.
Yeah,
But I'm gonna check on Wikipedia. But yeah, so that is the kind of things we're trying to do. So to be as close as possible, like what these guys were going through in the medieval times. So we need some more funds to come in. So if people want to help us, check out the project, what we're releasing right now, it would be nice. Because it is something crazy and something new nobody has done before. So
it'd be cool if you got sponsored by a big TV show.
yeah, well, we have a few very nice sponsors, and we also have some patrons that are helping us. They gave us some donations, and now we're resuming. Okay, you're right. 4,600 meters, which is 15,000 feet.
Okay, even a thousand feet off, 15,000. And going up to that peak it was insane. Like I mean, just to think of you in armor doing that, I'm like, man, I just rather just sit in Toluca with a beer. I'm waiting.
Yeah. Not even holding the camera. I will wait down the stairs grabbing a beer.
Yeah, well, you got it right. I'll just pay someone there to hold the camera for me.
Yeah, yeah.
But yeah, so anyway, guys, like I mean, do we have anything else to talk about today? Do you think of?
No, I think that was the thing.
No more questions?
Guillermo just says once this COVID thing is over, we're more than welcome to come to Mi Casa de Su Casa.
That's nice. But yeah, so I'd say like yeah, honestly, I think this is been a good show. It's a good first show, I think.
Yeah.
You?
No, it was amazing. Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you for doing this on short notice. I mean, we have other people we have lined up too that we both know, like Anders and stuff, who will be on the show eventually. But it's cool. Like I knew you'd take the opportunity. We've known each other now for like almost 12 years.
Yeah,
Maybe
I think
especially.
close to around 11, 12 years now. It was the second Factual America when we met. I think it was a long time ago.
That's you think about that. We know each other for a decade already. It doesn't feel like it.
No.
So let's hope this COVID thing passes so I can come down to Mexico for my event and actually see you again.
Yeah, You owe us a visit, and I owe you a visit. So hopefully, whenever
I'm
this
waiting.
is,
I'm just waiting. We had to cancel our tournaments too.
yeah,
So,
I was set to be there for the Virginia Highland Games. It was Virginia, or it
yeah,
is the
Victoria.
Victoria. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, Virginia's a little further east.
Yeah. So I hope I can do the Victoria Highland Games next year. That is
Yeah,
something I
we don't
really
even
want to
know
do.
how that's going to work. No one knows.
Nobody knows. Yeah, I know.
COVID. COVID is so. It's been so pervasive in everyday life for everybody
Yeah.
that I mean, it makes me want to wear a mask when we're talking. Where's
Well,
my
at
mask?
least not now, but yeah.
But that, yeah, it's just a it's and I don't know if it's going to get any better anytime soon. So we may like people were like, oh, some people in Europe are doing tournaments again, but I mean, who knows whether they're going to see a second wave of COVID or not? We're starting to see a second wave of COVID here. We're not really sure. In BC, our province has done a really good job at keeping it like down.
Yeah.
Who knows what'll happen? How about Mexico?
Well, in Mexico, we'll never get a second wave because we haven't finished with the first one.
Really?
Yeah. So we are just peaking and peaking and peaking and peaking. So
Why is
probably, well, the measurements taken are not as good, and people are not being really responsible about it. So it is just going up.
so eventually it'll just take run its course.
It seems like it. I mean, they are saying that we're gonna be one of the first countries to get a vaccine, but that is because they're gonna test on us.
Very nice.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, yeah. Like I think they would test it a little more first. But
Yeah.
yeah, honestly, been an absolutely great show. It's always good to see you. Thank you so much for coming on. And guys, support his projects. Arturo's a really great guy. Not only is he a great guy, he's a great martial artist. And I'm going to be bringing on more people of his caliber long term. I hope you guys enjoyed the show. Oh yeah, fun fact before we stop today, we tried to figure out a name for this show. I don't know the name for the show yet, but if you guys have some cool ideas for the show and you've watched this, please put down in the comments below.
Yeah. Thank you for having me, Lee. It was a really real pleasure, and I hope to see you really soon. And also send my regards to Nicole and the rest of Blood and Iron.
All right. See you soon, brother. Take care.
Take care. Bye bye.
Bye.